Hey everyone, I'm Katie from Addicted to DIY, and today I'm going to be building cornhole boards, but I'm going to be building them a little bit different. I'm going to be laser engraving the design into the top of the boards. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of how I build my boards and all of the troubleshooting that I did to ensure that I had the best engrave possible on these boards, so stay tuned. Cornhole is a super fun outdoor game to play with friends and family, and it is really easy to build it yourself. The best part about building them yourself is your ability to customize them with paint and stain. Since getting my Thunder Nova 51 130 watt laser, I knew that there had to be a way to kick things up a notch with not only customization, but with also production. And I'm going to show you how I did that and what I learned along the way. So when I first decided that I wanted to use my laser to make cornhole boards, honestly, the first thing that came to mind was the borax trick. If you haven't heard of the borax trick, I'm going to link to it in my description below. There's a great video that explains how to do it, and it's a really great technique. It was going to give me a perfectly smooth surface, clean, crisp lines, and a super dark engrave. So I got to work testing that theory out. I tested my theory out on some scrap wood before starting on the real thing to see what settings were the absolute best. Once I was happy and finished with my test, I moved on to the actual board. Unfortunately, it ended up not working well at all with the settings I had chosen. It started off looking amazing, but after a few more minutes, things took a turn. For my 130 watt laser, it actually doesn't work efficiently for long periods of time on large pieces like this when the power setting is below 30%. What you get is banding lines where some areas will be lighter, some lines where there was no power at all. It forced me to rethink my plan and come up with a new one. So another issue with the borax method is that it really just sits on top of the wood. It's almost a charred surface. So if you were to brush a finish on, which I tried, it actually just smears it everywhere. That could be alleviated by spraying the finish on, so that wasn't a problem. But those banding lines that happened on the large engraved design, it just wasn't working. So I decided to scrap the method altogether. I decided to test some new methods of seeing at what speed and what percentage of power I could get a very, very shallow engrave, but still get a dark engrave so that the design would look crisp, it would look great, and it wouldn't be this deep engrave into the wood where the bags couldn't slide over it. And I came up with the perfect solution or combination of speed, power, and focus to get that great engrave. Once I had my settings down, it was time to get to work. For these boards, I'm using 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood. The panels come in 5 foot by 5 foot sheets, which I cut down to size using my Craig adaptive cutting system. It allowed me to quickly and accurately break down the plywood into 2 foot by 4 foot pieces with the help of the ruler guides on the track. Once my boards were cut, I sanded them down. First with 220 grit and then 320 grit sandpaper. Then I took them over to my laser. I positioned the boards so that they were perfectly in line with the X and Y axis on the laser, using the red dot on the laser as my guide. Then I pinned down the middle because the plywood had bowed a little. This Arizona heat really makes that happen quickly. To design these cornhole boards in Lightroom is actually really easy. All you have to do is draw a 2 foot by 4 foot rectangle, hit the unlock button here, set the length to 48 inches and the height to 24 inches. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this so that the origin lines up with the top corner of the workpiece here. So I'm going to set the X position to 24 and the Y position to 12. Now for the circle, you're going to make a 6-inch by 6-inch circle. So set that to 6, set that to 6, and then to position it, we'll highlight the circle, and then this will get set to 12 inches. Or actually, I'm backwards, hold on. This will get set to 9 inches, and this will get set to 12 inches. And this gives you the exact placement for regulation cornhole boards. So for the outline of the boards, I'm actually just gonna choose a random layer color for this. For the hole, I'm gonna choose another layer color, and there's a wide range of settings that work for the 1/2 inch Baltic birch. This looks to be the last setting that I used. So now you have the entire design of the boards. Next, what you can do is you can import your own design. Go ahead and use this one. I'm going to turn the design and rotate it 90 degrees, and then I'm just going to adjust the size of it so that it's proportionate to the boards. And then just position it wherever I feel like I want it to go. To make sure that it's centered, I'm just going to set the Y position at 12. And then that's it. And when you are ready to start your job, what you'll do is you're going to toggle off the output for both the outline of the boards and the hole, because the only thing we want to do is the engrave. So you select the entire job, and then I always send it over to the machine. I don't cut or engrave this large of a piece straight from Lightburn. I send it over to the machine. When it's time to cut the hole, I toggle off the engrave and I toggle on the hole. And this one I actually will send straight from Lightburn to the working piece because it's a small little area, so I'm not too worried about it. The formula that I found to work best with engraving the cornhole boards is setting my focus at 11, my speed at 1000, and my power at 30%. Once I've set the placement for the cornhole boards, I send the file over to my laser, and then I frame the design to make sure that everything is where it should be on the board. With a project this large, I always send the file to the laser rather than start it from Lightroom. This way I know that there won't be any sort of interruption in communication should my computer accidentally go to sleep, or the battery run out because I forgot to plug it in, or any other random reason. Once my design is finished engraving, it's time to cut out the hole. I haven't yet upgraded my air assist on my laser, so I'm using stock air assist on high and my 2-inch lens to cut out this 1/2 inch Baltic birch. It actually cuts it without any problem at all at a range of speeds and power. However, Baltic birch is pretty notorious for having some glue spots in it where there's a lot of glue buildup and the laser just can't cut through on the first pass, even with 1/4 inch. So I ran this a second time because there was a spot where it didn't completely cut through. The speed and power that I used on this was 7 speed and 65% power, but I've actually had these same results even at 80 or 90% power. When the boards were finished engraving, I got to work building the frames. I started by sanding down all of the pieces. Doing this prior to assembly makes things so much easier. To construct the frames, I drilled pocket holes into the ends of the end pieces and center supports. I love using my Craig Foreman to quickly drill these pocket holes, but if you don't have one, Craig has you covered with a variety of pocket hole jigs like the 720 Pro that can quickly and easily adjust to the thickness of your wood and holds everything you need in one small package. I used my Craig multi-mark tool to measure and mark the legs for the placement of the carriage bolt hole and also draw the radius using my compass. I cut the radius on the legs using my bandsaw, but this can easily be done with a jigsaw as well. I cut just to the outside of the lines I drew, and then sand them in the next step. I used my belt sander to fine-tune the radius on each of the legs and sand them down to just inside the pencil marks I made. Again, no big tool is necessary for this. An orbital sander will do just fine. We just happened to find a great deal on this sander years ago on Craigslist, so I'm using what I have. I forgot to do this prior to heading to my bandsaw, but I also marked the angles for where the legs get cut. You measure 1 inch up on one side of the leg and then draw an angled line down to the other end. This ensures the proper angle for the legs so they lay flat on the ground when the boards are set up. I cut these on my bandsaw and then sanded the ends down smooth. To build the frames, I added glue to the ends of the shorter boards, clamped them to the longer side pieces, and attached them with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. For the center support, I marked the center point on each of the sides of the frame and lined the edge up to those. I attached it with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws as well. Next, I attached the top. I added a bead of glue to the entire top edge of the frame and then carefully placed the top down on it. I squared it up with the frame and secured it with 1 1/4 inch 18 gauge brad nails. Now, prior to building these frames, I had pre-drilled the holes where the carriage bolts would be inserted for the legs to rotate. It was at this point in sanding that I realized I had attached the top basically upside down. So the irony of the shirt I was wearing is definitely not lost on me. So I got to work figuring out how I could remedy the situation. I'd always wanted to figure out a way to add a holder for the bags onto a board, so this pretty much gave me the perfect opportunity to try that. Filling the hole in with wood filler really wasn't an option because I knew that with these not being stained, the wood filler just wouldn't blend in great. And I didn't want to have to rebuild this entire thing. So I came up with this idea. I planned out a sort of flip-out bag holder that would go on the bottom end of the board, utilizing the same concept of the legs where it can rotate open and closed. I ripped a 1x4 in half to make slats on the top that would hold the bags in place and used a 1x4 on the end to keep everything secured. It worked out pretty well, I think, and my customer actually loved it. Once I was sure that my plan worked, I started the finishing process of the boards. Obviously, the board in this clip is not the same as the others I was just working on. I had forgotten to film the finishing process on those, so bear with me. I used Rust-Oleum Parks Pro Finisher polyurethane in my HomeRite sprayer to finish off all of my cornhole boards. It's water-based, it dries fast, and it's super easy to clean up. I spray about 3 to 4 coats on the boards, and then I sand them with 220 grit sandpaper once the coats have dried. Then I spray on another 3 to 4 coats and do one last sanding with the 220 grit paper before I hit them with a final coat. In between coats on the boards, I worked on assembling the legs. I cut the leg supports to size and drilled 3/4 inch pocket holes into each end. I use a scrap piece of 1x material to set underneath the leg support to give it just a little bit of a gap from the front end of the legs. And then I measured so that it was equally placed on each leg. I clamped everything together and attached the legs with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. Once the boards were dry, I added the leg assemblies to them. I had pre-drilled 1/4-inch holes into the sides of the boards and the legs and then ran 2-inch carriage bolts through the holes. I used 1/4-inch washers and nylon locking nuts on each side to secure the bolts in place, tightening them until the carriage bolt was secured into the wood, then backing the nuts off just until the legs rotated in and out with just a small amount of tension. You want to keep it just tight enough so the legs don't fly out on you when you're carrying the boards. Next, I installed the beanbag holder to the bottom of one of the boards using the exact same method. Plus, I added a handle to make it easy to open up. And that's it! The boards have a crisp, beautiful design on them that can be customized any way that you like, and a super shallow engraving that allows them to work beautifully to slide those bags across. For the full plans for this project, make sure that you visit the link in my bio. If you're looking to get a laser, make sure you watch my other laser videos to see what I chose, why I chose it, and my setup. Special thanks to my partners in this video, Thunder Laser USA and Craig Tool Company. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and let me know what other types of laser videos that you'd like to see. Thanks so much for watching.